Welcome to Turning of Times. This week carries a very clear arc from pressure and disruption into emotional softening, and finally into a major shift of responsibility. Several important planetary movements are happening this week. Together, they describe a movement from reaction to accountability. At the start of the week, Mars separates from Pluto in Aquarius. This marks the release of intense pressure around power, control, ideology, and collective systems. When Mars and Pluto met, we act under compulsion. When they separate, we begin to see the consequences of what was set into motion. This is a moment of aftermath. What did that struggle awaken? What patterns are no longer sustainable? What actions cannot be undone, but can now be understood? This sets the emotional and psychological tone for the week. Venus in Aquarius squares Uranus in Taurus. This is a disruptive, relational, and value-based aspect. Venus in Aquarius seeks freedom and objectivity. Uranus in Taurus shakes what we rely on for stability, emotionally, financially, and physically. This square can bring sudden realizations about relationships, about money, about what we truly value versus what we've been clinging for comfort. Is uncomfortable but clarifying. On February 10th, Venus moves into Pisces. After disruption, we are offered compassion. Venus in Pisces dissolves rigidity. It restores empathy. It reminds us that not every truth needs to be delivered with force. This is the moment where emotional understanding returns, where we can integrate what was shaken without hardening. This is also why February 10th is such a meaningful moment for financial and emotional realignment. Choices made with softness tend to endure longer than choices made under pressure. This prepares us for the final, most important shift of the week. On February 14, Saturn enters Aries. This is not a subtle transit. Saturn represents responsibility, structure, consequences, and maturity. Aries represents will, action, and initiation. When Saturn enters Aries, action is no longer innocent. We are asked to take full responsibility for what we initiate. No more acting first and explaining later. No more blaming circumstances for choices that we made. This is the beginning of a new cycle of accountable action. One of the reasons Mishpatim is so central in Jewish mystical thought is because it introduces the idea that justice unfolds over time. Not everything can be resolved in one chapter. This entire sequence is reflected in this week's Torah portion of Mishpatim. Mishpatim follows revelation. After inspiration, we receive laws. After spiritual awakening, we receive responsibility. Mishpatim teaches that freedom does not mean absence of structure. True freedom is the ability to act with awareness of consequences. And this is where later teachings about reincarnation don't feel abstract. They feel inevitable. If something remains unfinished, the soul doesn't disappear. it continues. For those of you who ask me previous lifetime work, where does previous lifetime work fit into Torah? This is where. Not as fantasy, but as spiritual accountability. Just as Saturn enters Aries, Mishpatim asks, can you stand behind your choices? Can you act without denial? Can you allow responsibility to strengthen you rather than restrict you? This week is not asking for perfection. It is asking for ownership. Let disruption reveal truth. Let compassion soften the heart. And let responsibility guide actions. Here is an affirmation for us. My actions are intentional. My will is guided by responsibility. I choose freedom through accountability. Thank you for being here for this turning of times. If this way of reading astrology through Torah and lived experience resonates with you, you're welcome to stay connected here on the channel. I share weekly reflections, longer form teachings, and deeper explorations of soul patterns and accountability. You'll find more here on Astro Wellness when you're ready.